They were called the kings of the sea, men who defied empires and lived without rules. But behind the legends of freedom, adventure, and buried treasure lay a truth far darker than the tales ever told. The world remembers pirates as fearless rebels, but few know the misery, hunger, and fear that defined their every day. This is not the story of glory. It's the story of survival beneath the black flag. Every story of pirates begins with a dream, the dream of freedom. No kings, no masters, only the open sea. But the truth? Freedom came with a cost no man could escape. Once a sailor joined a pirate crew, his fate was sealed. To leave meant death. Their so-called brotherhood wasn't built on loyalty, it was built on fear. They worked under the shadow of betrayal, sailing endless oceans with nothing but desperation and greed keeping them alive. Their world was not romantic. It was brutal, dirty, and painfully real. Life aboard a pirate ship was a nightmare painted with salt and sweat. Days began before sunrise, hard labor, endless chores, scrubbing decks, repairing torn sails, rationing what little food remained. They lived on moldy bread, dried beans, and water that reeked of rot. Disease spread faster than trust. Scurvy rotted their gums, fever burned through the night, and death became a familiar companion. Yet, amidst all this misery, they sang. Rough sea shanties echoing across the waves, songs that masked their fear, reminding them that, somewhere deep down, they were still human. Despite their chaos, pirates followed a strange order, a set of rules known as the Pirate Code. Every ship was its own democracy, captains chosen by vote, loot divided by agreement. Even the injured received their fair share, a rare kind of justice in an age ruled by kings. But this code wasn't built on compassion. It was built to maintain control, a fragile peace between desperate men. Anyone who broke the code faced punishment so cruel it made others tremble. Whipping, marooning, or hanging from the yardarm, their broken bodies swaying above the waves as warnings to all. And then there was the flag, the infamous black banner known as the Jolly Roger. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a weapon of fear. When that skull and crossbones appeared on the horizon, entire ships surrendered without a single shot fired. Everyone knew what it meant. No mercy. Pirates thrived on terror. It was their greatest weapon, against others and themselves. Every pirate knew his end would come in only two ways: swallowed by the sea or swinging lifeless from the gallows. And yet, they sailed on. By the early 18th century, the golden age of piracy began to die. Empires struck back with vengeance. Navies patrolled every corner of the ocean, hunting pirates to extinction. The great names, Blackbeard, Calico Jack, and Anne Bonny, fell one by one, betrayed, captured, executed. The flags they once raised with pride were torn down, their bodies left hanging in ports as warnings to anyone who dared follow. The age of piracy was over, but its myth had just begun. We remember pirates as rebels, men who stood against tyranny. But their truth was far more tragic. They were not heroes. They were victims of the same cruel world they tried to escape. Born into poverty, cast aside by empires, driven by hunger, they turned to the sea not for gold, but for revenge. When they raised that black flag, they weren't declaring war on nations. They were declaring war on fate itself. Because in the end, piracy was never about gold. It was the desperate need to be free, even if freedom meant dying for it. The sea was both their prison and their salvation, vast, merciless, eternal. So when you hear stories of buried treasure and endless freedom, remember the men behind the myths, the ones who traded everything for one last taste of the open sea. They lived like legends, but died as ghosts.